Okay, so this is a recording of not live. I was away this week, so we are doing today Brachot Yud Zayin on the base. Continues the Gemara from where we were yesterday. I just wanted to mention quickly that I did not mention yesterday that the Gemara about the Rabbanan, the Yavne, who said something incredibly egalitarian. Ani beri v'chaveri beri, ani mlachti veri, hu mlachti basad, ani mashkem mlachti, hu mashkem mlachtoi, shem shem ani miskad mlachti, kach en ani כך אני איני מסגד במלאכתו, ושם term אני מרווה ומעמד, שאני איך נאמר ואיך נאמר, ובלב שחייב לי בשל השמיים. That Gemara, beautiful Gemara, that seemed to be talking about me. I learn more because I work at home, and somebody who works in the field, he has, or I work in the city, and he has to go deep into the fields and come back, so it's much harder. And so therefore, maybe I'm going to be misgoy, maybe I'm going to be thinking I'm great and he's not so great. So no, you should know Echan Amar v'Echan Amabed. Rashi take it a much step further. Rashi makes it much more unbelievable because Rashi said that the Chaver is the Amma Aretz. He's not just a person who learns less. He's Mamish and Amma Aretz, presumably because he's learning significantly less. But nevertheless, that is what Rashi says. Rashi's taking it all the way to the end and saying this guy's an Amma Aretz. What's unbelievable then is because, and the Kivega pointed out in Gilashas, is that the Chaver Amma Aretz is for Rashi not a possibility because Rashi says in Sukkah Lamites that Talmud Chacham, it's a Lam Arts, not Chaver, it's not called a Chaver. It's not a problem. Of course, you find many times where Goyim, where Ami Arts are called a Chaver. So it's not an issue that they're a Chaver of the Talmud Chacham. But for Rashi, it's an issue. So you understand from Tesis' respect, Tesis brings all the various rayas where you see a Chaver is somebody who's an Am Arts of a Talmud Chacham. Tesis doesn't bring down Brachot Yud Zayin as a raya. Why not? Because obviously we're not talking about Am Arts. That's not what the Gemara said. The Gemara said talking about somebody who learns less. But for Rashi, who holds that person who's a Talmud Chacham cannot have a Chaver Am Arts. So how could Rashi, or why is Rashi possibly, forcing this Gemara to be talking about an Amaretz and then to have the word Chaver to cash on Rashi Shita that he says there in Sukkah Lamites? All right, we don't have any more time to discuss it, but we have to move on. It says the more single dot, about 5 lines up on the bottom of his Zayin of Aleph. Ki avim after Rabbanan Meir Ami v'Amal Meir Rabbi Chanina. When the rabbis would leave Rabbi Ami, some when they left Rabbi Chanina, Ami lehachi olam kantei Rabbi Chayecha. They said your world should be able to see in your life. What does it mean? It says Rashi kol tzarchecha timatzi. Whatever your needs are, you should be able to find in your life. So it's very nice. Your end should be in Elam Haba v'tikvas kol dar dar. And your hope should be for generations. Your heart should have understanding. Your mouth should have wisdom. And your lips should be singing. Your tongue should be singing praise. Your eyes should be seeing straight. Your eyes should be able to see the light of Torah. Your face should be shining like the rakia. Can't get into what Rakia means for now. What Zerakia is, unfortunately, that will have to wait, but certainly that was part of the pre-Copernican understanding of the world. Moving on, says the Gemara, your mouth again should be speaking wisdom, and again, even your kidneys should be saying the right things. And your feet, mamash, your feet, your feet should be your roots, to hear the words of the Rebbe Shalom. Of course, that brings up, or that reminds us of the Gemara that we had before, where the Gemara told us that was it Reb Zera? I think it was Reb Zera. Oh yeah, it was on Vavam Beis. Reb Zera. Reb Zera said that Igra de Perka Riata, right? A person should schar for the shear is the riata, is the running, right? Remember, there are times people don't have, as Rashi points out, Ikar kibul schar bis, haratzon l'shma droshim, bichachim v'lu schar merutza, she'erei rabim einam mevinim lavan girso, they don't even understand, but they get the schar for running to the shear. And as the Gemara said, I'm Rav Shimon Levi, I'm yorutz adam dvar halacha v'afilu b'Shabbos, right? Always supposed to run. So again, pa'amecha yerutzu l'shmoya divrei adik yomeh. So a person should be running to hear the words of the Rebbe Shalom. That is clearly seen there in the Gemara there. After Rabban Rebbe Rav Chizda, Rav Shmuel ben Nachmani, when the rabbis would leave, either Rav Chizda or Shmuel Nachmani, they would say, so again, we're bringing this up because again, we're talking about rabbis leaving from one another. So Amar Lehacha, they would say this, Alfeinu Mesubalim, right? Again, the pasuk there in the end of Tehillim, Kuf Memdal, some people have meant to say it before, Ma'ariv Amatzah Shabbos, Alfeinu Mesubalim, the Aluf, the general, the leaders who are Mesubalim. What does it mean, Mesubalim? They're soivel, they're laden with things, they're bearing things. What are they bearing? Alfeinu Mesubalim, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yechon, Rabbi Lezer, Chad Alfeinu Mesubalim Mitzvahs. One says that the Aluf is is what is he essentially being a general in? What is he the greatest in? Is in Torah. And what's he being served? What's he laden? Mitzvahs. That what they're laden with is Torah mitzvahs, and they are soivel, they are laden with yisurim. So once we already mentioned this, we're ready to continue the Gemara and talk about the rest of the pasuk. In parrots, in says the ain sevacha b'chayvei. That's the end of the pasuk. In parrots, what does it mean? In parrots, there's no pirza, there's no breaking through. There's no breaking onto the other side, right? That's why we're going to have it in this week's parsha. It happens to be as I'm recording this parsha by Yeshev. So we're going to have parrots and zarach, ma pirza halacha parrots, right? Ain't parrots. So it shouldn't be a pirza like it was by David. What was the pirza by David? Sheyatza mimenu achi teifel. So this explains sheparth pirza mimenu achos beis David. Of course, Achitov maybe had a good reason, as Chazal pointed out. Maybe he was the grandfather of Hashem. Maybe he was very upset. Maybe he was very upset at the whole ma'aseh with Uri Achiti. Nevertheless, he caused the pirza by going with Avshalom, giving him all the advice and getting him a big break with David Melch. Again, the Arch wants to point out, maybe it should be flipping this around. Either way, it doesn't make a difference. The main point for our purposes now is Peretz and Yertzes are the same. They're both leaving. So who left by Shaul? We shouldn't have anybody leave us like it was left by Shaul. David was a bad guy. He's a terrible, terrible person. Among the things that he had done, his claim to fame is in relation to the whole killing of the Nevi Iraq Canaan. The end of that pasuk is that there shouldn't be any cries in our streets. What does it mean? Again, homiletically, what are we saying as a matter of drash? There shouldn't be any cries. It shouldn't be that we have anybody come out of us that will be like Gechazi. What was the problem? Gechazi, why is it called Tzavacha? As it explains, because he was a Mitzvah, and we know about the Torah, the pasuk tells us Tamei Yikra, right? He has to call out and make sure nobody comes too close to him. He has to call out that he's a Tamei. Just to point out that the Gemara could have used the Gemara we had before, right? We talked about the Gechazi before. What did we say about Gechazi? The Gemara before had told us that Gechazi was it was on Yonah ben Aleph. I think the Gemara told us that Gechazi, the Gemara says on Yonah ben Aleph, Veyigash Gechazi lahodfa Rav Yosef Rechnis she'achaz b'hoid yafya, that he had grabbed her, and Rashi says b'dadea, which is very inappropriate, so she shouldn't come too close to Elisha. But the point here is that it has to be out loud. That wasn't out loud, so therefore we have to find something else about Gechazi, and that's what we're talking about is tzaras. Continues the Gemara. So we said, what's the words berchoy v'seinu? There shouldn't have anybody that overcooks, that cooks their tavshil baram. What is this a reference to? As they say in other non-censored versions, kigoyin yeshu hanoitri. Right, this will be an example, perhaps the first in brachas of yeshu hanoitri coming up as somebody who's makdiach tavshil baram, somebody who went l'tarbas ra, who went off the derech. Continues the Gemara. So once we already discussed these psukim and what people were debating about, Rav Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Lezer. So again, we have over here another one of these psukim debated again, Rav Shmuel or Rabbi Yochanan ben Lezer. Shmuel lai abir lev harcheikim mitzedakah. Right, these are abir lev. These are hard-hearted people who are far from tzedakah. So is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Rav Shmuel v'amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Lezer. Chadam hakolam kulum nizel mitzedakah v'hem nizel mitzvah. Most of the world, right, nearly all of it is sustained because of Kodesh Baruch Hu's tzidkis, because they don't deserve it. But these are Biri Lev, they're good people. They are able to be sustain themselves on their own. The Gemara later on Ches Base, we're going to have the Gemara is going to tell us about Haraya Kivrei Yisrael. So the Gemara says, "So these are people able to be sustained by din itself." However, it's not so clear that necessarily that's the ideal way to daven. There is a Sifrei in Vaschanan that tells us that by Moshe, by David, that they even though they have, of course, the greatest of the Jewish people, they could daven mitzad din, mitzad they deserve it, they refuse to. And instead, what they did was they relied on matnas chinam because that was the appropriate way to do it. Because you don't want to say, I deserve it. I'm entitled. Nobody's entitled. Instead, what should you do? You should be toilet, ask the Bereshit for matnas chinam. Or as we saw already before, the Gemara told us about the Also, Gemara, you know, base about Chizkiyahu Melech, Zecharna Es Asher Salachti Lefanecha Be'emes V'Lev Shalem. Right, that Chizkiyahu Navi was told B'schus Atzmai. He was saying, "I deserve it. I'm entitled. Look how great I am." And the Rebbe Shalom, of course, did not do it because of him. He did it because of David, etc. So again, query whether or not this is the only approach within Chazal as to understanding people who are righteous. Should they be relying on their own efforts in terms of asking the Rebbeinu Shalom for something, or should they be relying on a Matnaskinim, or should they be relying on the schus of those that came before them? Continues the Gemara. Says the Gemara, and others that say again, a good thing that the whole world is surviving based upon their schus, and them themselves are feel the schus atzmin, and they don't even take anything for their own schus. Because Rav Yehuda Marav, like Yehuda says in the name of Rav Yehuda Marav, famous Gemara b'cholim v'yem baskol yetzis me'acherev, a basket comes out from ha'acherev v'omer as kol ha'olam kulan izem b'shul chanina b'ni. The whole world is being sustained for Chanina, my son. Chanina b'ni dala b'kaver charuvim me'er Shabbos lav Shabbos. And Chanina ben Deisa, and I'm ben trying to say Malchus. Chanina ben Deisa is essentially living on a kaf charuvin mamash on a bunch of buxer. That's what he lives on the whole week, right? It's famous Mendoza and the whole mices with the Gemara's and Tainus. Later on, the mices we're going to have with him as well. Various miracles that occurred with Mendoza, and he did not take anything for himself. So what this is basically saying is two understandings of this pasuk of Shimu Elai Abir Elef or Chikim Mitzdaka. Is it that these are most of the world relies on tzedakah, or most of the world relies on the righteous? Either way, the righteous themselves do not. According to the first version, is the righteous rely on themselves, mamash bezroya. But the second version is saying no, the righteous are not taking anything for themselves based upon what they deserve. Um, perhaps that would be, as we just pointed out, there's different members of Chazal. Maybe this is a machlokas between these lashonis. I'm not sure. In any event, we continue on. Says the Gemara, "Upliga Rav Yehuda," and you should know this is actually machlokas Rav Yehuda. Marav, he said what he said in terms of the Rav Yehuda, but it's the machlokas Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda, man Abir Leiv. Rabbi Yehuda himself has his own approach to what a Bir Lev means, and his approach, assuming it's the same Rabbi Yehuda, his approach to a Bir Lev is actually that these are Rishon, as Rashi points out. These are Mamash Rishon, not a good thing. So the Rabbi Yehuda, Man Bir Lev, who are these Bir Lev? Guvoy Tapshoy. Who are Guvoy Tapshoy? Rashi says it's the name of a nation that lived in Bavel. In Bavel. Now we know throughout Shas we have what's called Bavloi Tapshoy, and the Gemara has a lashon there that why they bavloi tapshem mishum dedarbe because they live in a dark area. In fact, we talk about the Esrog Hakushi as a result of that in part. So essentially, we have a situation where we have a machlokes says that Abir live good people or not such good people. According to Rabbi Yehuda himself, they're not good people. Abir live are the Gavoy Tapsher. They're the dumb Babylonian people, the Guvoim who live in Bavel, and they're bad because they're tipshim. They're dumb. They're missing out on a fundamental. What are they missing? They should know that nobody became a ger from them. What's the issue? Why would anybody become a ger? Because you have to remember the Gemara Pesachim Peisan. The Gemara tells us over there that like Higla Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Lebeinu Umais Ela Kadesh Yitetz Shalem Gerim. The whole reason for going and dispersing the Jewish people all over the world is to find the Nitzos Kedusha, to find these various Gerim. These people, not one of them became a Ger. Rav Ashi adds additionally, Bnei Masim Mechasya Abir Levninu the Kochazu Yikra the Arais the Trezim Mshas Lekem Ger Girum now that they saw the wondrous aspect of Torah. They saw the Jews coming twice a year in order to be able to learn by the Yom Tishrei, Yom Nisan, when they have the Kala, and nobody was inspired. Nobody converted from the area. It wasn't because of fear or fright of the kingdom or anything like this. No, the Jewish people are gathering together to learn. Unbelievable, and nobody was inspired enough to convert. As Titus points out that when it came to Shavuos, of course they didn't do it. It's only one day, so they couldn't get such a crowd. And this also brings down from Rabbi Yehuda Bar Barzilai in the Sefer HaItim that he heard that there was a fire that would come down from Shemayim during the Kala of Elul and Adar for the two sits of Yom Tovim of Rosh Hashanah Kippur, Sukkot, and for Pesach. Okay, continues the Gemara. We are at the two dots. The two dots, Chasan Imrot Likras. The Mishnah told us back on Tezayin base that machlekes there chassan. If you wanted to read, we know the Mishnah before on Tezayin Nav told Rabbi Gamliel. He said he's learning Shema, and he was in when the students asked him how could he learn Shema when he's getting married. He said, you can't stop me from mim kaba or machal shemayim. Always I have to have it. Fine. Then the more Tezayin Beis, the Mishnah told us that a chassan, if he wants to read the Shema, it's okay. Rav Shmuel said, no, no, no. Lo kol Hashem is yitol. Not everybody who wants to take Hashem's name can take it, right? Meaning that's machlekes. According to Rabbi Shimon and Gamliel, a chassan cannot say Kriyat Shema, and according to the Rabbanan, he could. It says the more that the according to Shimon Gamliel, clearly he's afraid of Yuara. He's afraid of being a show off. Somebody's gonna be essentially wanting to say the Shem Hashem, B'kabel Malchus Shamayim on the night of his chassan, and he's a show off. He says he can have kavanah. So you see, Rabbi Shimon is saying that if no one can do that, so he's choshesh liyara. In other words, forget his father. But generally speaking, he's choshesh liyara, and not everybody can, loiko right to litos Hashem yito. Not everybody can, reach that level. So therefore, unless somebody is a mamash, as Rashi points out, he's a mamash muchzik as a chacham and a chassid l'rabim, ein zel a gaiva. It's just gaiva. He's showing off that he thinks he's at that level. So unless somebody like it's a name, everyone knows the name. Like he shouldn't be saying Shema. That's what Shema Gamliel is. Chaysh v'yura. Rabbanan like chaysh v'yura. And say Rabbanan, I'm not worried about you, Aro. The rabbi say anybody can, say that they're a Talmud Chacham. If they want to say Shema, they can say Shema. If it doesn't work, that's a problem. I have a problem because I have a steer. What's a steer? The Tanan. We're learning in the Mishnah, Malkim Shenagu, Lasses Malachim Tishba Vaisim, Malkim Shenagu, Shlo Lasses Enes, in a place where they have a custom to do work on the Tisha B'Av, then you could do it. If they have a custom not to do the work on Tisha B'Av, you cannot do it. And any place where there's a Tamid Chacham that are batal, so then in that situation, then a person wouldn't work. Says Ram Shimon Gamliel. A person should always make himself into a Talmud Chacham. So what's it coming out? It's coming out according to Shimon Gamliel. You go to a place where there's no obvious Talmud Chacham. You could say you're a Talmud Chacham, and therefore you're not working. What does that then mean? That means that according to Shimon Gamliel, you're not choshesh v'yora. And according to Rabbanan, if there's a Mokim Talmid Chachamim, then you're a Talmud Chacham, then you don't have to work. But if there's no place where there's a Talmud Chacham, you can't say, "Oh, I'm a Talmud Chacham, therefore I'm not going to work." So what does that show you? That the Rabbanan choshesh v'yora. So it seems the opposite of what we just said in the Mishnah on Tezayin Amud Beis. That's the question we have to come to answer, and that the Gemara answers. Kasha Rabbanan, the Rabbanan, Kasha Rabbanan, Shimon Gamliel. So one Pasha answer, Amar V'yechim B'chlav Zashita. Just switch it around. If you switch it around, make this Braisa or this Mishnah over here, make this into Shimon Gamliel is the one who's telling you that only if it's a Makom Talmid Chacham are you able as a Talmud Chacham not to work. But it's the Rabbanan who are saying that you're able to call yourself a Talmud Chacham and not work because they're not choshesh v'yora. Shimon Gamliel is choshesh v'yora, so that's easy enough. But the Gemara says no, that's not the only possibility. Of Shish Breder of Idi Amar Lo'el Metachlaf. No, you shouldn't switch it around. The Rabbanan like Kasha. I used to have a steer between the Rabbanan. So what's the difference then between Shema and the situation of working on Tisha B'Av? The Pasha Kriyash Shema came into Kulei Amakar, even Amikari, just like so by Kriyash Shema, everybody else is saying Shema, everybody's davening Ma'ariv. So when he's davening to Shema, it's not a big deal. No one's going to notice, right? So Kriyash Shema is not a question. Why not? Says the Gemara, the Rabbanan like Kasha Kriyash Shema came into the Kulei Amakar, even Amikar Lo Mixed like Yura. It won't be seen like Yura, so it'll be allowed to do it. But Haka came into Kulei Avdim Malachim. If everybody else is working, you like Avdim Mixed like Yura. But if he's not going to be the one guy, says, "Oh no, I'm a Talmud Chacham, I'm not working," that's going to be Yura. That's going to be showing off. So Rav Shimon Gamliel like Kasha. Why is Rav Shimon Gamliel not a question? Rav Shimon just said that you don't say Shema because it's Mixed like Yura. So says Rav Shimon because Shema is different. Hashem mechavana talyam milsa. With regards to kavanah, it's very different than Tishba. Tishba is about working. So you want to say that you're a Talmud Chacham, you don't have to work, no problem. But when it comes to Shema, which requires kavanah, that's something different. Anan sadi we're witnesses effectively to the point that no chassan who's marrying a psul is able to mechaven. So therefore we say loikol arachi yitol Hashem yitol. And it's a message if you're going to say Shema. When they see he's not working because he's being maxing himself like a Talmud Chacham, they're not going to say, "Wow, machzik yura." They're going to say, "Per chazik kamat lani." You give a sugar to say he's just like everyone else who doesn't work. Much about the lanin. So that is the way to answer up if you want to say that Rabbi Gamliel and Rav Shimon Gamliel, and the Rabbanan are not having to be mechavos shita. They want to say that they're exactly the same in both, and then there's no stira because you can differentiate between Shema and working on Tisha B'Av. Tysus points out over here that the Rak says that the halach is like Rav Sheshes, and the halach is like Rav Shimon Gamliel, because we say b'chol makom sheshana Rav Shimon Gamliel mishnas halach gemaisa chutz mebe'erev tzidim v'raya achrona. So if the halach is like Rav Shimon Gamliel, so then why don't we say like Rachi tells Hashem Yito? Why don't we say that you don't let chasanim say Kriya Shema on their wedding night? So Tesis explains, "Miu anu shebishum pam ein anu mechuvanim heter." Right, something we mentioned already a few times before, that because a person never has enough kavana, sufficient kavana. So then gam chasen yesh likos. So then even a chasen can read because what's it missing out? And Adarab says this nira ki you are him lo yikra. It's like you are if he doesn't read. No one is going to say I could have the requisite kavana, and so therefore because of my wedding night I can't have the requisite kavana. Therefore I'm not. You are balgaiva. Everybody doesn't have enough kavana. Avalas malacha, but Tisha B'Av ain't lasses malacha, right? But with regards to malacha, it's not. We're going to go again with Rav Shimon Gamliel. Rav Shimon Gamliel says that essentially, as we just pointed out, that in makom shenag lasses malacha Tisha B'Av, I assume makom shenag shalai lasses ain't. I assume chol makom shtamid chacham mitelan. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer la elam yasser kol adam es atzmai to kam chacham means that the same way that when it came to Shema, Shimon Gamliel, at least in his generation, was Chesh V'Yora. Over here, when it comes to working, we're going to pass on Shimon Gamliel and not be Chesh V'Yora, either because, as it seems to be saying, is the approach of Rav Sheshes or Rav Shisha, that effectively that it's not comparable because not working doesn't require any kavana, but Shema does. So that's where there will be a mechzikura. But when it comes to working, there's no issues. Don't worry about it. Everyone's going to think he's a batlin like everybody else. And so therefore, since we passed him Shimon, that means no working on Tisha B'Av. All right, Hadran Alach, Hayat Kairei. Hadran Alach Kairei, Hadran Alach Kairei. So now the next Mishnah, the Misha Mesu, should this be the next Mishnah or not? Seems to be a difference between Rashi and Taisus. According to Rashi, maybe Misha Mesu should come after Tfilas HaShachar. According to Taisus, no, it's appropriate here because we just finished dealing with a whole bunch of Shema, so we're going to deal with some more about Shema. Says the Mishnah, Misha Mesu Mutal Fanav. Somebody has a person who passed away lying in front of them, Padrim Kriyashma and Tefillin, not Tefillin. They're Padrim Kriyashma and Tefillin, Tefillin. Mekom is a Mosh B'Torah, right? The person not yet buried. So it's Padrim Omz is Darais, and of course the Rabbanan, as we're going to say, Shman Esri, Nesi, Amita V'Chalofein, V'Chalofei, Chalofein. Those that are coming to switch by the beds take the mace to the burial. Eshel Lefnei Mita, Eshel Achar Mita. Those that are before the Mita, those that are after the Mita. Eshel Lefnei Mita, Tzarech Mem Feturim. Those that are before the Mita, they still have to carry the Mita. They are going to be pater from saying Shema V'Eshel Achar Mita Tzarech Behem. But those that are after the Mita, even if there's a need for them, Chayavin. They are nevertheless still chayav because they've already carried, they've already done their duty. Taisus again doesn't like this gears over here that Rashi has. It's difficult to understand. If it's a tzarech for them, then why are they still going to be chayav? So Taisus changes the gears a bit to make it sound a little bit better. But fundamentally, people who are still required for the deceased are not required to say Shema, and those who are not required for the deceased are required to say Shema. And they are both pater from Shemana Esrei, which is either, according to Rashi, one shot says because it's not their Raisa, but then Rashi says from his rabbis, Rabbi Sinim Pirshu, that the reason that they're pater is because for Tefillah you have a lot more time than you have for Shema. The Linera says Rashi she'en zeh lashon pater. To say that the lashon of pater doesn't sound like it's because you have to say that you have more time. It's not really the lashon pater. Lashon pater is like you don't have to. You're scot free. So Rashi goes not the approach of his rabbis, but rather because it's not the Iraisa. Continues the Mishnah. Kavras hameis. Once they bury the dead, chazru, and they come back to him. If you're able to say Shema before they come to the shura that they would do as you leave the cemetery, so then yaschilu. Then you can say the Shema. And then if you can't, if it's not enough time, then don't say the Shema. Ha'imdim b'shura. Those who are actually standing in the shura and the Siman Kriya Shema, Hapnim Pturim, those who are there who are going to be able to actually say Hamakim Nachim, so then they're pater in the Shema, V'achitzanu Chayavim, and those that are outside are Mechuyev. All right, we'll stop over here and continue the Gemara in a few minutes. Have a wonderful day.